Welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to talk real estate or commercial real estate being the back door into government contracting money, rather. Today we're going to break down something most people completely overlook. We're talking about how real estate connects directly to government money. Not theory, not hype. We don't do that over here, but real alignment. During this session, I'm going to cover some very important things, so get ready to take notes. Why real estate is one of the strongest entry points into government contracting. How the federal government actually leases buildings in plain English. What Title 40 United States Code, USC, Section 585 really means, and why investors should be paying attention. We're going to walk through a real example of how a hotel becomes a VA-aligned veteran housing asset and how that turns into a long-term revenue system. We're also covering commercial office space and the GSA leasing opportunities, warehouse positioning for DOD, FEMA, and DHS. Then we're going to dig deeper, how one property can generate multiple contracts, what I call a contract ecosystem. I'm also going to give you a simple checklist to position your building for federal opportunities and a real life script you can use on how to present your property the right way when talking to government officials. And for my investors watching this part is very important. We're going to talk about why most investors are chasing volatile opportunities while ignoring government-backed demand. A literal opportunity to get written into the everyday public infrastructure plans, which is where money is required to flow by statutory authority. Excuse me. And finally, I'm going to walk you through the critical mistakes that stop people before they even get started. Here we go. Now, let me show you something that most people in government contracting never fully understand. Real estate or commercial real estate. It is so much more than just an investment. It is leverage, and when you align it correctly, it becomes a direct path into government money. Now, let's ground this in reality. There is a law that most investors have never heard of, but once you understand it, you cannot unsee the opportunity. That law is in the USC, Title 40, United States Code, Section 585. Now let me explain this in plain English. This law gives the federal government the legal authority to lease property from private owners. Meaning, the government is not required to own buildings. In fact, they don't want to own buildings. They want to rent yours. Now, let's connect that to procurement. Under FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, Part 8, Subpart 4, Subpart 8.4, the government can acquire services and space through structured acquisition vehicles under FAR Part 6. Competition requirements can be shaped based on available sources and mission urgency. Under FAR Part 10, market research determines what solutions even exist in the marketplace. Let me translate all of that. Before a contract ever is posted, the government is already asking, who has the space? Who has the capability? Who can meet the requirement quickly? Because in 2026, it's now about speed, which benefits everyone. So if you already control the asset, you are already in position. Now, let's take it a step further. Federal money itself is covered under 2 CFR 200. That's uniform guidance. That regulation explains how federal funds are allocated, spent, and monitored. We talk about compliance a lot on this channel, right? Meaning money is already flowing into programs like housing. That means everything from homeless veterans, reentry, soldiers, emergency response, logistics. The only question is, who is positioned to receive it? Shouldn't that be you? Now, let's walk through a real example. A hotel that can go into a VA housing pipeline. You acquire a hotel because chances are it's underperforming, like most of them. Occupancy is low, revenue is unstable. Most investors try to fix that with better marketing or pricing strategies and throwing away money because investors fail at a rate of 90% average. But let's shift that mindset. You reposition that hotel into veteran housing, which is currently allocated billions of dollars right now. Now your asset aligns with the Department of Veterans Affairs programs governed in part by federal housing authorities and supported through funding structures tied to Title 38 United States Code veteran programs. You also align with supportive services for veterans and families, known as SSVF, which operates under federal grant structures guided by 2 CFR 200 compliance requirements. Now, here's the key. The funding already exists. The government is already required to address veteran homelessness. In fact, there's over $3 billion for it right now, and that number's going up. But they need capacity. They need buildings. They need operators. They need you. So instead of chasing a contract, you created something that a contract needs. You see what I'm getting at? That is called leverage. You're positioning yourself to be the answer to infrastructure gaps. Now, let's expand. FEMA disaster housing. When disasters hit, housing is required immediately. Hotels, apartments, temporary facilities. This authority comes from the Stafford Act, the Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. And procurement during emergencies often falls under FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, Part 18, Emergency Acquisitions, which allows for faster contracting, reduced competition requirements, and immediate deployment. So if you control assets in key areas, you are already aligned with emergency demand. Now let's go even further. DOJ, Department of Justice, Reentry Housing. Department of Justice programs support reentry, transitional housing, and detention overflow. These programs often align with 2 CFR 200 funding structures. By the way, CFR is the Code of Federal Regulation, and local state implementation layers. Again, space is required. The government don't want to own space, they want to rent yours. Now let's shift to commercial real estate. GSA PBS leasing. GSA is the General Services Administration. Federal agencies need office space constantly. This is managed through GSA Public Building Service, or PBS, and supported through Title 40 United States Code, Section 585, which allows leasing authority. Now let's connect procurement. Under FAR Part 15, negotiated procurements allow agencies to evaluate proposals beyond price. Meaning, location, build out capability, security, functionality. All of these things matter. Don't get stuck thinking it's just about price. Now, let's simplify this. If your building meets federal requirements, you are no longer just leasing space. You are solving a mission requirement, a major infrastructure gap. Now, let's talk warehouses. Warehouse/logistics play, we'll call it that. This is where most people are asleep. Think about Department of Defense, or Department of War rather, supply chain operations, FEMA logistics, emergency supply distribution, Department of Homeland Security, known as DHS, storage and staging. These align with FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, Part 37, Service Contracting, and FAR Part 45, Government Property. Meaning, facilities are needed to store, manage, and distribute assets. So, if you own warehouse space and position it correctly, you are part of the infrastructure where money is required to flow by statutory authority, not just real estate. Now let's go even deeper. Contract ecosystems. This is what separates amateurs from real players. One building can generate multiple contracts. Yes, one building can generate multiple contracts. Let me give you an example. So let's say you develop a housing facility. Now you need security, FAR Part 37, maintenance and repairs, janitorial services, food services, transportation, medical support. So instead of one revenue stream, you have an ecosystem. And ecosystems create stability. They create trust with the decision makers. Now let's make this practical. And I hope y'all writing this down, by the way. Positioning checklist. Before you even think about contracts, ask yourself, is the asset compliant? We talk about that a lot on the channel. Is it accessible? Does it meet safety standards, ADA, local codes, federal requirements? Is it located near demand? Transportation? Infrastructure? Can it be modified to meet agency needs? Are you visible? Are you visible through brokers, GSA pipelines, industry relationships? That's positioning. Please make sure you all are writing this down and taking notes. Now let's talk about how you speak, how to pitch your building. One, you don't sound like a landlord, you sound like a solution. I hope y'all caught that. It's all about being able to be a solution provider. For example, you say, we control a property in such and such location that aligns with agency requirements. The asset meets federal requirements and can be configured for immediate use. We are positioned to provide capacity where demand already exists. That's how you get in the room. If you want me to make that more practical, reach out for a consultation. Now let's talk to the investors, and I'm talking about the institutional accredited investors, because this is where the biggest disconnect is. Most investors are chasing volatility, stock, crypto, trends, tech, ideas, and they wonder why they cannot get out of that 80 to 90% failure margin. Meanwhile, the federal government is deploying billions of dollars into housing, logistics, in all aspects of infrastructure, governed by congressional appropriations. 2 CFR 200 funding structures, and federal program mandates. So the question is, do you want to chase opportunity or align with that which is already inevitable? Because once you understand that, everything changes. Now, let's close. Real estate is not just about ownership, and I hope you get this. It is about alignment. This is why so many real estate investors are failing. Align it with a mission, align it with policy, alignment with demand. Because once all of those align, you stop chasing deals and you become the solution for infrastructure gaps where the money is already flowing. And that's where the money resides. And that's what you need to be focused on. Once again, I am Derrick Green, also known as Theo, CEO, founder of Sky Acquisitions, GovCon Empire, and you can also find me as Theo Duro on my other pages. Fun fact I like to add, I don't talk about this very much, but I'm also a performing musician. All right, a jazz and classical pianist and artist. I said it's time for me to start talking about those things on this channel as well, all right? So that you all can connect with me in different ways. But I digress. That stuff aside, you really need to start thinking about what's needed to keep infrastructure moving. For those of you who don't truly understand what infrastructure is, think about it this way. When we say infrastructure, we're talking about everything we need for society to function. Think about water being irrigated into your homes, your bathrooms, electricity, the bridges we drive across, medical services, emergency services, police services, our military, everything that we need for society to function, your highways, landscaping. Now, when you think about government, you should automatically be thinking about the different administrative bodies that manage those various sectors of infrastructure which I just described. And because humans manage infrastructure, there will always be human error, which means there will always be gaps or infrastructural gaps. The money is in the gaps. Why? Because our government is required to allocate money to solve infrastructure gaps. So all you need to do is position your assets, your capital, your business plans to sit in those gaps where money is already required to flow, already authorized by congressional officials, by regulation, by agency decision makers. Talk soon. Bye.